Welcome everyone to episode 3, season 2 of the View from the Clipper podcast. As always, I am James Warner, your host for another episode this week, joined again as always by Josh Sexton. Josh, how's your week been?
Oh, big exhale, James. I'm not in the usual setup here. I've had to take a seat for this one. It feels like when someone delivers bad news to you and they say, yeah, you might just want to sit down. Me and you mentioned on the last podcast that it would be a disaster, really, if the Clippers didn't do anything but go 3-0 and they decided to completely flip the script on us and go 0-3. It's been a really bad week to be a Clippers fan between Kawhi's injury, and I'm sure loads more of the kind of stuff we're going to get into on the podcast. But trying to stay positive outside of the basketball thing. I know we always sort of do a little football nod at the start of these shows. The football's not exactly helped for me this week, to be honest. So maybe just slightly disconnecting from sports a little bit is the way to go this week. Finding your escape from the thing that you use as your escape is always interesting. But how have you found the week, James? How have you been doing?
I wasn't expecting after the third episode to be starting Clippers therapy with you, Josh, but it feels like that's where we've got to now.
Uh,
Basketball therapy, just yeah, I think both of us over the last week have just been like, I think we're going to be honest on the podcast, been pretty disconnected from the Clippers, like many who are probably listening or watching right now. It's just been a struggle, and like you said there, like just injuries, losses. I think was it is it six in a row in total, obviously since Kawhi went down. So yeah, it's real tough out here for Clippers fans. But I think we're hoping today just to like obviously just do like a real quick go over of like the last 3 games, 4 games actually, because we're recording on a Thursday, so we have the benefit of talking about another loss. So four losses since we last spoke.
oh God.
Um, Briefly, I know we usually break them down in a bit more detail, but I don't think anyone wants to listen to us just talk consistently about how bad the Clippers are without Kawhi Leonard and a tired James Harden right now. So we'll touch a bit on that. Some of the bright points, if you know there are any out of the 4 games. So obviously the other big news that have come out of the last week, including Bradley Beal and his injury, but also like a look forward because we need to bring some kind of optimism to the Clippers fans. It can't just be all doom and gloom. I think I enjoy trying to figure out where the Clippers can go from here. I know you do as well, Josh. So we'll get on to that. But yeah, as you mentioned, the Clippers 0-4 since we last spoke, dropped 2 games back to back to the Suns. The Clippers had already managed to beat earlier in the season. Obviously, they had no Kawhi Leonard for any of these games. Then follow up with a 102-105 loss to the Atlanta Hawks, followed by last night a juggernaut performance by Nikola Jokic, which I don't think we're really used to with Ivica Zubac nowadays, who I think has been over previous seasons been, I guess, a Jokic sort of kryptonite in a way. He's sort of reveled in his matchups with Jokic, but last night the Joker got the better of Zubac and the Clippers, unfortunately, dropping 55 points in a 130-116 win in Intuit Dome. Josh, I'm gonna come to you and just ask you about your thoughts on these games because, like I said, I'm not gonna make you break them down individually because I know that's gonna be hell on earth. But talk to me about what you've seen over these 4 games and how you're feeling now the Clippers are 3-8 to start the season.
Yeah, the God's honest truth is very little in terms of like, watching all the games all the way through. Like generally because it's an 82 game season, that's like very intense, and with the time difference for us UK fans, I'll try and like avoid spoilers and then go and watch a game with like no knowledge of what the score was. And with the first Suns game, I'd accidentally like, 'cause I usually have hide scores on the NBA like website. and I'd been doing a bit of research for the NBA podcast that I do, and they'd turned show scores on rather than hide scores. So the minute I clicked on the page, the score had been ruined for me, and I realised that we'd lost. And I was like, okay, like I've got a busy day. I maybe just leave that till later and watch like the all possession stream. And then I just kind of forgot about it. And then the same thing happened because I didn't hide scores. And the second Phoenix Suns game happened, and I was like, right, well, I'm definitely not watching that. Like I'm actively just not going to engage with that one because that seems like two like really bad losses in a row to what is a pretty poor Phoenix Suns team, albeit they had Jalen Green back until his injury, which I think got revealed either yesterday or today. Um, a team that the Clippers, even without Kawhi Leonard, with the depth that we think they have, at least on paper, should have been able to beat the Phoenix Suns, really, even without Bradley Beal as well, I'd argue. But they didn't. And then the Atlanta Hawks game, yeah, that comes around. And, like, I guess by that point, like, there was some green shoots in terms of, like, there was a little bit more to hang your hat on. The young guys had, like, come into the rotation, and that made you feel like there was potentially a bit of hope because that's been a thing that's been, sort of anti the Clippers culture for so long, really, is that it's felt like a lot of old guys. It's felt all too laid back, really. And I used to quite like when the Clippers were that sort of laid back underdog because it felt like the Clippers were always a team who, like, they get a fair amount of press coverage, and it's because they're a big market team. And I think, like, whether Lakers fans think there's many Clippers fans in LA or not, talking about an LA team just does get clicks. And I think the Clippers clearly have a lot of like haters in terms of opposition fans as well for one reason or another. And what the Clippers have been quite not necessarily good at, but like the culture they've adopted, which I've been able to get behind, is that like they're this sort of quiet, unassuming underdog, and at some point they'll come and prove you wrong. And unfortunately, more often than not, they've proven people right. They've done little moments of proving people wrong and little moments where they think they can give you a bit of hope. And maybe this is just one of them again, where like, oh, they're finally playing some young guys. Maybe that's going to be a thing that sticks, and then we'll get Kawhi and well, obviously not Brad back this season now, but we'll get Kawhi back, and we'll probably use the disabled player exception to, get another old guy in, and then suddenly the young guys won't be playing again. And it just, yeah, like the Clippers are a team of real false dawns, but I am hoping that what we've seen, because the young guys have performed so well, and me and you sat on this last podcast and sort of lobbied for more Cam Christie minutes, and he's impressed in those minutes that he's been given as well. He looks like such a good, like his form on his deep shooting is so clean,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that I've liked is like it looks like it's easy for him to shoot, whereas even some of the best shooters on the Clippers, like James Harden's put up some really efficient performances through this run, but like still like airball two shots against the Hawks, and it's like there's real streaky shooters on the Clippers. So to have a guy who obviously is young, so there's going to be streaks naturally that come because of the lack of NBA experience, but to have a guy who has that sort of neat shooting form and looks like it comes natural to him from behind the line, can hopefully be a big positive for the Clippers. And then the other guys that sort of exist around the edge of that, the other young guys like Kobe Sanders, who I've not seen an awful lot of, but Kobe Brown, who I have seen a little bit more of and have been mostly impressed by when he's been in, albeit the Clippers have already revealed that they're not going to give him the extension, so it looks like he's going to be I don't know if it's restricted free agency. He'll go into in the summer. I guess it would, because it's not the rookie extension that they've denied from him. So and then obviously Yannick Niederhauser, who came in the summer, we may get to see a little bit of, which like that's probably the one that I'm like least, I don't know, like excited about, but I guess it's a benefit because like Brook Lopez has looked every bit of his age throughout this little run, especially. But basically, since the first three games of the season, really, I think the first time we recorded this, we sort of gave Brook some praise because he'd been putting up some big points nights and things like that. But since then, like the shooting has not even looked good. The ability to score inside has looked awful. The ability to defend his own rim has looked awful, which I'd used to be like, oh, like Brooks finished and whatever, but like I could kind of say the same about Ivica Zubac, so like I can't really
Yeah.
sit here and just criticize Brook Lopez for that. So yeah, a really rough week in terms of Clippers basketball. Kind of, I guess what we've come to expect now when Kawhi's injured is that it will look rough and things will look, not good in terms of results for the Clippers either. But the one thing I guess you can hang your hat on is seeing some of those young guys come into the team, and hopefully, as I say, that's the thing that sticks, and it's not another complete false dawn for the Clippers.
Yeah, it's a stark difference from last season because obviously they didn't start the season with Kawhi last year, I think there were some troubles in sort of the early part of the season, but I think they were quick to sort of adopt that defensive mentality, which sort of paved that gap between Kawhi being out and allowed them to sort of teeter along like sort of the middle pack of the league until they got Kawhi back, and then did that surge towards the end of the season when they had that additional firepower. I think it was always a concern coming into the season that like the number of changes and the direction of the changes so far away from that defensive identity was going to open, these kind of possibilities up where the Clippers could start season 3-8, or potentially get worse when Kawhi is not around, because we know he's not going to be around. I think unfortunately in this case, I don't think it's like, oh, like typical Kawhi is injured again. Like it seems like it's like a foot, more like a foot sprain, ankle sprain, which is obviously so far removed from what he's used to in terms of like the knee injuries, like the sort of the knee condition that he has. So I think it's more just unfortunate, but you're gonna miss Kawhi, like whether it's the knee, whether it's something else, whether it's load management. Like I'm sure the Clippers were preparing for him to, not to play the whole season. Unfortunately, he's missed 6 games. The 5 games that he has played, the Clippers are 3-2. The 6 games that they played without him, they are 0-6. So I think that just speaks volumes. And I think it's probably one of the biggest themes around the Clippers start to the season is that this is just not a good basketball team without Kawhi Leonard on the floor. I think you could say it for quite a few teams in the league. Like you take Jokic off the Nuggets, you take Shea off OKC. There is a dip there, but it's not as like a bigger drop off than it is with the Clippers. Like I can't think of another team in the NBA where the star doesn't play and like the difference is this sheer, like the stats just fall off a cliff because we just don't have any kind of shot creator outside of James Harden. It's literally the James Harden team. Obviously that first game against the Suns, James had an illness, so he didn't play. I think I sort of wrote that down as like a definite loss. Like I just didn't see this group turning out a result, and if they did, like it would have been one of those like all-time great Clipper wins that we've seen over the years, where it be like that win against the Hawks where Luke Kennard just turned into a 3-point god, or the one I was like super super lucky to go to in Brooklyn on New Year's Day a few seasons ago, where a COVID-ridden Clippers team managed to take down the sort of star-studded Brooklyn Nets at the time. Like that's like classic Clippers, but like I'm just not expecting that anymore. Like I don't expect these like comeback wins that we were accustomed to. Like there's just not that kind of firepower. We don't have a guy in the team that can just light up like that anymore, that I think previous editions of the Clippers team had. I'm not particularly inspired by many players in this group. And yeah, it's a sad place to be because we are only 11 games in. And I think I've been saying on the podcast, like, I don't want to write the Clippers off early. Like I want to see more games, but the more games I see, like I think, like you've said, I haven't been watching all the games, but even just the more losses that are coming, and sort of analyzing the performances from where it be media guys who are involved with the Clippers, or NBA podcasts that talk about the Clippers, or just looking at the stats in general. The Clippers are just a bad team right now, and currently constructed is just not fun to watch. It's incredible, an incredibly slow team. A team that were top 3 defense last year, as I mentioned, under the sort of stewardship of Jeff Van Gundy, but now, yeah, just a horrible defensive team, a horrible offensive team without Kawhi Leonard, and I think that's just the fact of the matter, really. But I think what has been good out of these games, I think, like you touched on, has been like the young guys, like they managed to get minutes, like Cam Christie and Kobe Brown, I think, through the first couple of games. And then last night, Jordan Miller and Kobe Sanders, like that has been pretty fun. I think a lot of Clipper fans have been sort of eager for that. I've been calling for it even over previous seasons. So the Clippers haven't really drafted well over the last few years. So this is like the core that they have now, the young core. And it's not going to get any better because, as we touch on later in the pod, the Clippers draft assets is pretty bleak as well. So like this seems as good as it gets for like rooting for young guys, but they've been showing out in these games, and I put a tweet out earlier today, like they all deserve the minutes that they're getting. Obviously, it seems like Ty is like splitting them up. Like Cam and Kobe Brown are maybe a duo that he runs with. And obviously, last night they got minimal minutes, and Jordan Miller and Kobe played. Jordan Miller last night with 22 points. Kobe Sanders had 9 points in the first quarter, or the second quarter, including three consecutive threes. So that is great to see. Those are great headlines for the Clippers, and I would love to see them continue to develop these guys. But as we'll get on to, that's not helpful for the Clippers winning right now. Like these are all players who are still developing. They're not at a point where they can go and win the Clippers the game. Albeit, I think Jordan and Kobe did great to keep the Clippers in the game and even ahead at points last night. But ultimately, in the end, the star power of Jokic is what obviously got the Nuggets over the line. So yeah, it's been a tough week as we've mentioned. And any of the young guys that you've been like particularly impressed with, Josh, or any of them that you think maybe deserve more minutes going forward?
I just think that the Cam Christie and Jordan Miller thing has got to be the way to go. Like they are the two who feel like they are capable of like just putting up a lot of shots for the Clippers. Jordan Miller in particular, be like he is a shot creator, isn't he? He may not necessarily be a playmaker. That's maybe one of the things or sort of profiles that's lacking when it comes to these young guys is someone who is a bona fide playmaker, someone who can bring the ball up the court. And maybe that's Jason Preston as much as I think Richard would crucify me for if he was listening to this for trying to say, but like Jason Preston is a playmaker, so maybe it's him and he can come into the fold at some point and be a part of that. Who knows? But yeah, like the two guys who can get their shots up are the ones that I'm sort of looking for the most. It's partly why like I'm not sort of majorly excited by like a Yannick, for example, is that I don't really see a way that Yannick can come into the team and like boost the score in any way. Like I think the Clippers have been, terrible defensively this season, but I don't think we need to like add more defenders to the mix to make that the case. I think that's like an identity thing as much as a personnel thing. Like the Clippers have great defenders throughout their roster. You look at guys like Batum, who seems to have completely fallen off a cliff edge this season in sort of like round game, which has been really sad to see. Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. are two premier defenders. Ivica Zubac is a premier defender when they're all having the day. The problem is like none of those guys are having the day on the defensive end at the moment. So I would say that's probably schematic as opposed to personnel things. People may argue it's personnel things, and I respect people's opinions on that. But like I think these are guys who were brilliant defenders just last season. Like Zoo was in DPOY contention. Does he make the all defensive second team as well? I think Chris Dunn, if he made the quota of games, I'm sure it would have been in contention for that too. Derek Jones Jr. was pretty underrated defender for the Clippers for much of last season, but has that athleticism that I think me and you have spoke about so much on this podcast so far. The most disappointing thing with the Clippers and their age is that we sort of hoped that the Clippers could still win numbers games on the odd occasion, and I think what you see in this season, even in the Warriors, like I know the Warriors are 7-6, so they're like completely different ballpark to what the Clippers are operating in right now at 3-7, is it, or 3-8 now? But like the Warriors probably thought they could win more numbers games than they've been able to win this season, and suddenly it looks like you've seen Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green coming out and criticizing their teammates and stuff. So it's pretty clear that like old teams just aren't going to be able to rise to the fore anymore. You need young athletic guys, and we obviously have that in Collins. We have it in Derek Jones Jr. I know he's not like young per se, but he's obviously got the athleticism. So leaning on those guys more heavily, leaning on, I don't know about the athleticism of guys like Kobe Brown and stuff necessarily, but if they have that, they have ups and stuff, then like it can only help the Clippers and energize the Clippers. And then, as I say, guys like Cam Christie and Jordan Miller being, shot creators, being able to get shots up. I want to see more of that really. Like Cam Christie still looks like against the Hawks, probably quite a disappointing performance really from Cam, and he takes no shots last night off the back of it. And like that's the kind of thing that I hope Tyronn Lue is saying to those young guys is like, don't get afraid of shooting. Like if you have one bad night, don't let the bad night get in your head. Like shoot your way out of slumps. Because that will be the way the Clippers get out of this slump in general, is to try and force teams to be dragged into numbers games. Because one thing I can tell you at the moment is that the Clippers aren't going to be able to win young and athleticism wars against other teams.
Yeah. I think what I have picked up on over these four games is obviously whilst I think neither side of the ball has been there defensively or offensively, but I really liked what Kobe Sanders was saying yesterday about where the Clippers go from here. He didn't really speak on the offensive side of the ball. Like he was instantly sort of talking about sort of dialing in on the defensive side. And I think that work with Jeff Van Gundy, particularly for like young players who are coming into the league and like trying to find minutes for themselves. Like it seems like these guys are sort of starting with that like defensive focus first, and obviously like these should be like the most athletic guys on your roster. That these are all significantly that younger than than guys like Chris Paul, Brook Lopez, James Harden, Kawhi. Like these are guys that just coming into their NBA career. I mean, Cam Christie's 20 years old. So them buying into that, I'm a big fan of, and I think I've seen evidence of it even just in a few plays so far. I think it may have been that Hawks game. Like there was a play, Kobe Brown gets a steal, Cam Christie like going through for the dunk. Like those are the things I love, and I'm just keen to see like the trajectory of this group now, particularly obviously the young guys that I'm talking about there. Um, because Ty Lue last night saying that he's going to be including them in his rotations because his hand has been forced, and that is because obviously Bradley Beal has had a season-ending injury. He has been diagnosed with a hip fracture, and he will undergo season-ending surgery fairly soon. I think Clippers PR posted earlier in the week that his full recovery will be in around 6 to 9 months' time. So it's very unlikely that we're going to see Bradley Beal again this season. And obviously that has opened up significant amount of minutes for guys like Jordan Miller, Kobe Sanders, Cam Christie, and Kobe Brown. So obviously Brad has had a pretty poor start to the season, albeit that he has been on a minutes restriction. So I really don't think like Clippers fans have seen the Bradley Beal that we could have got down the line. So actually a lot of Clipper fans celebrating it, to be honest. And whilst I haven't been impressed with Bradley Beal, like I don't subscribe to the fact that this is like a big victory for the Clippers or like opens any doors, because this is a guy that the Clippers were big on and thought that they could get like significant production out of. Obviously in Phoenix, as he didn't have great seasons over the past couple of years, but I really thought that given this is also like a contract year for him, like we were going to see the best of Bradley Beal in the last few years, and it's just super unfortunate that this has happened, and it feels like it's just the Clippers that these kind of things happen to. Like I was absolutely shocked when I saw the reporting by Shams yesterday. So yeah, it's a real gut punch for the Clippers, because obviously as part of acquiring Bradley Beal, they've obviously had to make room, and they gave up Norman Powell, who's having obviously like a typical Norman Powell season so far for the Heat. So Josh, what were your initial reactions to Bradley Beal and the news that he's going to be out for the season?
Yeah, like same as you really. Like I definitely think it was something to celebrate. Like that's a guy who, albeit is not necessarily shown that level of shot creation and aggressiveness that we came to know Bradley Beal for when he was like at his peak on the Washington Wizards. And I wasn't naive enough to think that like he was ever going to get back to that level. But like even just a percentage of that level would have probably helped the Clippers in terms of, their expectations and their goals for this season. And the fact that now we know we're going to get 0% of that for the rest of the season is like definitely not a positive thing for the Clippers. People can say it's positive in the sense that, there's an opportunity now with the disabled player exception, and there's an opportunity for young guys to come into the fold and things like that. But like, yeah, I really don't see how like a top player on your team being injured is like it is a positive thing. Like the Clippers should just be giving minutes to those young guys, regardless of like whether Bradley Beal is injured or not, because Bradley Beal is not playing very well at the moment, and give Bradley Beal a chance to recover from whatever he needed to recover from the summer. Obviously now, I don't know whether it's like a new injury or whether it's a recurrence of something that he had already, but yeah, just rough, like rough to see that for Brad, like personally rough from the Clippers' point of view. I'd be interested to see what they do with that saver player exception now because I'd like to think they would try and use it to like get younger in some way. But like the trouble is with picking up any young guy on waivers. Is like they don't necessarily come cheap unless there's like a dream that you can sort of sell them on. Maybe the Clippers can say to a young guy who is on the free agents market, whoever it may be, like I would, I'd like to see personally a playmaker and shot creator if one of those guys is currently available. But the Clippers can sell it on. Like we honestly, like everybody's spot in the rotation is up for grabs at the moment. Kawhi's is up for grabs on the basis that he's injured a lot. James is up for grabs in the sense that like he needs to be rotated, otherwise he's going to be in serious bother come like any level of crunch time for the Clippers season, whether that be that the Clippers are scrapping for a playing spot come the end, or whether it be that like, I mean, God knows, because God knows where you go from here. You can't tank the season because, as you mentioned, the draft assets are not there for the Clippers. So, yeah, just another brutal twist in what has already been a brutal start to the season. Um, at most, I can see why people are excited by the opportunity that it may give the Clippers, but yeah, I wouldn't say that I feel good about it by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's gutting as well, given I think I mentioned this before. He's on a contract year, like he's playing for his NBA career now. Like he has like a season taken away from him at his age and point in his career. Like we've seen this before, where a player will come back and just fall out of the league. I'm thinking of guys like John Wall, in that category, who obviously we've seen on the Clippers just couldn't perform, and then just quickly fell out of the league. Obviously, I believe he could come back from this, but whether he's going to get another opportunity now, I don't know. And I'm incredibly sad for him because I never got the opinion from him like he was a bad influence or anything like that. Like I feel like those are the kind of players that maybe you want off your team. Like I think we've had guys like that of previous seasons who we hate speaking about, like Kevin Porter Jr. And things like that, which were sort of different kind of situations, but to sort of celebrate one of the Clippers' better players coming into season, someone who we had a lot of high hopes on getting a season-ending injury is not for me. Just on that disabled player exception, so obviously I did like a little bit of digging into this because I know that we're going to touch on like where the Clippers move forward now. Now that obviously Bradley Beal is out for the season. Kawhi is obviously we don't know when Kawhi's back, and James seems to be just doing it all on his own at the moment. Yeah, just on that DPE, it'll be equal to 50% of his salary, which is around $2.5 million. But because the Clippers are so close to the first apron, they're only going to really be able to spend like a million or something. So he's probably talking like a vet min, which I don't know what kind of guys are out there. I know people have sort of floated names like Malcolm Brogdon. I don't really know what that. I don't think that moves the needle for the Clippers. But I think, like you said, like there is opportunity on this Clippers team for someone to come in and play for their career, similar to how Bradley Beal was doing. And I think you got four young guys there. Probably, I'd say bar Cam Christie, maybe even I'd say bar Cam Christie, Jordan Miller, Kobe Sanders, Kobe Brown should all be itching to play and to produce, which is really exciting for Clippers fans. And I think we've been seeing that, and that's what's been fun over these games is that they've not all been blowouts because we've had like production like unfortunately not together. Like there hasn't been one night where like Cam and Kobe are bored, or like last night, like it would seem like Kobe Sanders that is got off to a good start, but then sort of didn't really get like a good shot at it after that. But Jordan Miller obviously 22 points last night, which is like that's big for Jordan Miller. I think we were speaking about Jordan Miller's start of last season, how like he was coming into last season like playing for that NBA contract, and those opportunities are here now because the Clippers may have money. They're going to have a lot of money next season. They're going to have potentially a lot of roster spots. So it's quite an exciting team to actually be coming and joining, particularly if you're a young player. And like I said, I'll get onto a few ideas around where the Clippers go next. And obviously, it's unfortunate that it's at the cost of Bradley Beal, and I'm really really disappointed to see him sidelined for the rest of this season. But yeah, I'm I'm really interested to see like who the Clippers could bring in. I think they can take maybe some more riskier moves. Like I'm even thinking of stories from this season of people, of players who surprised me, like even guys like Ryan Rollins for Bucks, is it? So he's got off to a really good start this year, and he was on a two-way. So like these are stories that can happen, and I don't always typically happen with the Clippers, but like you said, there are opportunities there now, and just interested to see where the Clippers go from here. The Clippers do need to apply for that DPE before for January, and prove that he's going to be out till June. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. Like he's having the hip surgery like fairly soon, so um, we'll see what the Clippers do. But any sort of final thoughts on Brad Bill, Josh, or any of the four games that we've had over the last week before we start pitching each other ideas on like how we can rescue the Clippers going forward?
No, I think we're this ship has been sinking for the past week, James. We need to rescue this Clipper before it gets taken by these harsh NBA seas. So let's get to it.
Awesome. Awesome. Right. Do you want to do the honors of going first? Where you think the Clippers can go from here? Um, Obviously the future of the sort of draft outlook is pretty bleak, but I think there are some things the Clippers can do, in the short term that can sort of put them in contention. So yeah, Josh, what are your thoughts? I want you to pitch me some ideas around how you're gonna rescue the Clippers, and we might need to bring you in as a sort of temporary lead of basketball operations in place of Lawrence Frank.
Yeah, it's like J Sex instead of L Frank, something along those lines. I'm basically looking at like a full cultural reset for the Clippers. That's what I think has been, um, so disappointing to start the season is how like laid back and almost like laid back's the wrong word for it because laid back still sounds like it can be like twisted into a positive thing. And I've mentioned how I feel like I've been doing that sort of like mind contortion over many years, being like, oh, like the Clippers are a great underdog because it's like the comeback clips, like just when you think they're written off, they just manage to do this thing in like a very laid back way. Like they don't need to be like all in your face, like fighting and being horrible. Like I know they're obviously a bit more like that when they had guys like Pat Beverly and stuff on the roster, but definitely in the last few years, it felt like they are, more so the quiet Clippers. And Tyronn Lue embodied that as like a real player coach as well, someone who, supports his players, is very direct with the media, like doesn't really lose his temper with the media in like a angry shouting way. And I know there's obviously not a lot of coaches who do that anyway, and it's probably not a great look when they do. But I think if Ty's sort of the way he displays his anger with the media, which is just to be like short and to one word answers and like no ma'am, yes ma'am, no sir, yes sir kind of thing. If that's the way that he's doing it in the locker room behind closed doors, and like I don't know, I don't have any insight into that. I can see a way in which it would be because everyone talks about him being the players coach. I can see a way in which he'd try and be like an arm around the player, a quiet word in the ear of a player who needed a bit of a talking to, or maybe more of a rocket up the arse to. Again, I feel like I always use really British parlance when I come on this podcast, but a player who needs more stern words than just the sort of sympathetic player coach. So I've defended Ty for a lot of years. Unfortunately, I think it's probably the end of the road, really. Like he's had a lot of iterations of Clippers rosters now, and a lot of talented players throughout that time as well. Defended some players who like shouldn't have been defended. I think the Russell Westbrook experience was like a real example of that. Marcus Morris towards the back end of his Clippers career was another real example of that. Like Ty just sticking with these guys who were clearly like bad for basketball in terms of the product that the Clippers were putting on the court night after night in terms of the contributing to winning basketball for the Clippers. Shows a stubbornness when it comes to roster rotations. And I know there's obviously been a lot of rotations this season, but a lot of them been enforced. And that seems to be the only way to force Ty's hand, really, is to force it. Is like, is by injuries forcing him or something. It seems to be the only way to, wake him up. So I'd like a guy who feels like he's, woken up from the minute that he wakes up in the morning, someone who feels like a glass of cold water to the face rather than feeling like they need one all the time. And there's someone who sits behind Ty on the bench who is that, and really actually doesn't sit behind Ty. He is most of the time stood up and being the only coach who is shouting and getting engaged in the basketball game, while Ty isn't doing so much of that. And especially this season, we've seen even less of that from Ty. So yeah, I'd like to see that there's like a sort of end of the road really. And like to see is a hard thing to say 'cause like I don't want to see anyone lose their jobs really. Like
Hmm.
I often get like a bit upset, and especially when it comes around in football as well as in basketball, that people start to like lobby for coaches being sacked and stuff because more often than not it's not the right answer to things. But as I say, I think like the culture of the Clippers is just gone on too long of being like this laid back team now, of being old and laid back, which like in a young and hungry NBA, as I keep mentioning, is not going to wash with anybody. So um, yeah, Jeff Van Gundy to coach a new, younger and hungrier version of the Clippers. If you can find a way to use this disabled player exception to, get a guy that is sort of younger and hungrier. I was just looking at like options that are on the free agency market there, and like there's not a ton that like leaps out off the page really. Like Dennis Smith Jr. is on there. Whether he'd take a veteran minimum is, I would imagine probably not. I don't know if he's like got some sort of injury, which means that he's not got a roster at the moment because it feels like he's a guy who like not necessarily a great shooter but a good defender, athletic, so young and hungry in that sense too. Ty Washington is on there, who's of course with the San Diego Clippers at the moment, so that maybe that's like an easier move for the Clippers to make to get someone who is a little bit more of a playmaker. I've already mentioned Jason Preston within that as well. Don't know whether that would be like the kind of move that I'm really envisaging, and he's 26 years old as well, Jason Preston, so he's definitely on the sort of older side of what I think the Clippers should be looking towards. But it feels like there's some things the Clippers can do in free agency there to pick up some of the younger guys, plow more minutes into, the likes of Jordan Miller and Cam Christie in particular. But if Yannick and Kobe Brown and Kobe Sanders can prove that they can contribute to, meaningful basketball as well this season, and, rival teams who are trying to run you off the court and who are trying to, dunk your head off at every turn, use guys like that who are young and hungrier to help you with rim protection, for example, like take that responsibility off guys like Brook Lopez, who it feels like could get yammed on by like 99% of the NBA at the moment. And to be honest, even the same with the Ivica Zubac. Like, I feel like every bit of criticism I have for Brook Lopez, I should have the same energy for Ivica Zubac at the moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, make the Clippers young and hungry. Get a hungrier coach in to help that cultural reset. We've seen it with the t-shirts in the off season. I know people are like find the t-shirts to be like a touch rich for their taste and stuff now, but to me, it's symbolic of someone who is looking to set a culture. And I think Ty looks like a guy who is maybe feels like his days of setting the culture with the Clippers are, if not numbered, then completely over. In the sense of like, what Zubac said is such a worrying thing to have a player come out and say that like basically guys aren't executing plays, like because I mentioned it in the group chat that we've got the other day, and me and Richard had like a little bit of a back and forth about it, where like it either means that guys don't want to hear it, like aren't listening to the coach anymore, so it's falling on deaf ears. It means that like they're too lazy to execute the plays, which is bad, and a sign that as much as the coaching is wrong, then clearly like the culture within the franchise is wrong too. Um, or it's just guys that like don't understand the plays, in which case the instructions aren't clear, and who do the instructions come from? The head coach. So um, yeah, find a guy who can get those ideas across in a clearer way. Give someone else a chance and sort of reset that culture, and hopefully you do manage to salvage something positive from this season. Because like the gap now even between the lottery teams and the play-in is already quite a gap. It's an 82 game season. It's a long season. I'm not saying the Clippers couldn't bridge that gap by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but the nine teams who are ahead of the Clippers in that playing situation all look a damn sight better than the Clippers at the moment. And by the way, that's a very damning indictment because one of those teams is I was going to swear them, but I won't. The bloody Portland Trailblazers. Um, yeah, like just come on, Clippers. Like find a way to get something out of this season. We don't own our own picks. The pick this season is going to the OKC Thunder again. Let's not give those those men again. I'm just like keep wanting to swear every turn here, but let's not give the OKC Thunder the satisfaction of another lottery pick. Please, for the love of all that is holy.
Yeah, when you spoke to me earlier about having to think around what the Clippers can do from here, like I sort of went away and just had a refresh around like their draft assets, the roster construction, the free agency, and like this was hopefully going to be like a more optimistic part of the podcast, but like it just continues to shout about just how like the Clippers sort of push themselves into this corner where they have to be competitive. Like there's literally no other route. Like I think the reason 3-8 hurts more than ever is because, like you said, OKC own the next 2 years of the Clippers, and they're already the NBA champions. And I put a message in the chat earlier. I think someone had sort of like suggested, or there'd been like someone who was saying maybe the Rockets should trade for Harden. I said the Clippers cannot let James Harden get disenfranchised with the Clippers as similar to he has with the Nets and with the Rockets. So yeah, the Clippers need to win now, and it's not just Clipper fans who want the Clippers to win now. It's also the rest of the league because arming OKC with potentially another lottery pick this season and then even one in 2027. So OKC own the 2026 pick. So the Clippers actually aren't drafting in 2026, which I don't know how many people know that they don't even have a second round pick either. Like they don't have anything like second rounders they can go and get. Steve Ballmer wants to dip into his pocket and buy one. Like they are for sale. Like it is possible that the Clippers can draft next year, but as of recording, the Clippers are not drafting anyone in 2026, and in 2027 they've got a swap. So you know, unless OKC have a terrible season or, a player gets injured, Shea gets injured, something like that, the Clippers are picking 30th next year. So these are not like desirable assets. And then even going beyond that, 2028, the first round pick goes to Philly. And there's also no second rounder either. So they're not drafting in 2028 either. And then they've got a pick swap with Philly as well in 2029, and then the first round pick goes to Utah in 2030. So the Clippers aren't really in control of their future until 2031. So the draft is out the window. Finishing in the low seeds is not on the table, and is only going to embarrass Steve Ballmer, Lawrence Frank, and the Clippers franchise even more if they do give up on this season. And something that I've maintained, and to be fair, like the Clippers have maintained over years, is that Steve Ballmer won't let the Clippers tank. Like I don't think even if the Clippers had draft assets, like they would not be tanking. I think it's multiple interviews. Steve Ballmer has said that like he just doesn't see the value in tanking. He doesn't see the value in losing on purpose. Like that's not him. Like that's not part of his character. Like this, everyone knows the personality of Steve Ballmer. Like, that guy is like the most positive, energetic man you would ever meet. He's not going to sit in into a dome watching his team purposefully lose games to try and get a better first round pick. Like it's not going to happen. I honestly, unless something drastically like terrible happens in beyond 2031, the Clippers, I can't see the Clippers getting a first round pick. The first pick in the draft. Sorry, I just can't see that under Steve Ballmer. Like I don't see a world that he's going to allow that to happen. So I think all eyes and all eyes have been on 2027, and trying to sort of clear the decks and do a bit of a reset. So I've even looked for like 2026 if they want to bring that window forward. You've got, I think in terms of like big names, I think probably Trae Young is like the biggest name who might be available as a free agent. I'm a big Trae Young fan. I love the way he plays the game. Like he's probably the first guy in the league after Steph who like plays that sort of style and is like clearly inspired by someone who's like redefined the NBA. But his efficiency is not great. I don't think I'd want to put all my eggs in the Trae Young basket, but if that was the only option on the table, like, and that's going to keep the Clippers' head over water for like a few seasons if they can build smartly around him. Like, I think whilst like a lot of fans will sort of pick apart Lawrence Frank, like there have been some like smart moves he has done to like a lot of nice pieces around like Kawhi and James. Even like over the last few years, like a massive fan of the Derek Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn moves. Like I think these have been like really great signings for the Clippers. But the rest of that sort of free agency class is not great. Like could the Clippers grab Luka? Probably not. I don't think he's going to hit free agency. He's like clearly going to re-sign with the Lakers. They might go shopping in LA again if Austin Reeves declines his player option, which I mean, the way he's playing this season like probably should test free agency and see how much money he gets. It might be that the Lakers will go big on him because, yeah, I don't know what other options they're going to have, and like he's been a really important piece for them last year. But again, I don't know, like Austin Reeves sort of leading the Clippers franchise. I don't know about that either. And then like just a couple other names I pulled out is like Colin Sexton and Kobe White. I think Kobe White's got a lot of fans, particularly in the Clippers UK group chat. I think there's a lot of guys who like him. I'm a big Kobe White guy as well. But yeah, again, it's going to depend. Like you're going to have to construct the best team possible because the Clippers can't give up completely on winning games of basketball. So I think a lot of the fans sort of calling for them to blow it up completely. Like I don't think that's on the cards necessarily because yeah, I just don't think you're going to get a lot. Like I don't think you're going to get a lot for James Harden if you decide to trade him. I don't think you're definitely not going to get a lot for Kawhi Leonard because he's that's not a player you can really insure very well. And then outside of that, it's probably only Zoo you can get draft capital for, and I'd much rather keep him because I think he's probably worth more than you're going to get for him as well. So yeah, the Clippers just I think in general just find themselves in a really really tough situation. Um, and I want to let you speak, Josh, in a second, but I just want to probably touch on Lawrence Frank as well because I know a lot of fans have been calling for him to sort of lose his job, and I think whilst like hindsight is 2020, and I think Kendrick Perkins is like the king of like just using hindsight to make these hot takes that he seems to have every so often. Um, I just think like if you're in Lawrence Frank position in 2019, like you make the SGA trade because you're getting a guy who literally dragged the franchise to the first ever title, MVP in the finals, and then also Paul George, who was an MVP caliber player. Like everyone remembers how excited they were back then and how like everyone in the league thought the Clippers were going to win. The Clippers have had multiple opportunities to win. I think they could have won during the 2-on-3 era, but just haven't had luck or injuries on their side. And that's just not something you can blame like the head of basketball operations for. There have been like some moves, and I think in hindsight again, like CP3, maybe even Bill to an extent, and even like Brook Lopez, like they haven't started the season great, so obviously it's reflecting bad. But I'm not out here calling for Lawrence Frank yet, although there are more. I think there are more fans calling for Lawrence Frank than there are like Ty Lue right now, which is like kind of like yeah. I think it's just the way we sit because of. I don't think anyone's really a big fan of how the Clippers are currently constructed, but if Lawrence Frank does go, I always remember him for like the class trades that he's pulled out, like Bledsoe for Norman Powell and Robert Covington is one of the biggest heists in NBA history. So yeah, I want more of that really, and I think that's what the Clippers need is more like crazy trades that don't cost them a lot, like just getting better on the margins through just sheer brilliance of I don't know how Lawrence Frank negotiates a trade, but clearly like he has some kind of skill there because he's managed to get some pretty good deals done for the Clippers over the previous season. So yeah, I think going down the trade route and just sort of using minimal assets to grab guys who may be out of favor, like that's the way the Clippers need to go. And as you mentioned, like the free agency class right now is not great either. But yeah, Josh, it's not easy, is it? Like I think the Clippers are really in a sticky situation right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one point that you sort of made in particular that I really wanted to hit on is like this idea that like the Clippers can like there's not really much star potential coming up in like the next upcoming free agency years now. Obviously the ones that the Clippers are eyeing up, whether that's this off season where they can maybe trade away a guy like Kawhi Leonard and maybe James because they're on expiring contracts, and maybe then you can bring in someone who sort of represents more of a star player. But then like looking at 2027, as you mentioned, with like Trae Young being in a free agency that year and stuff, like Trae Young is a guy who I think can lead a franchise, but can he lead a winning franchise who wants to play like winning basketball and compete for championships? Like I don't know. The defense clearly isn't like good enough necessarily. The playmaking is brilliant. The scoring is brilliant. There's absolutely no doubts about that. Maybe if the Clippers keep this sort of defensive identity that they did have, before this season started, and keep some of the guys around who've been, really important to that, then potentially I can see that being like a thing that the Clippers could do. But then besides that, like You mentioned a guy like Kobe White, who, he's maybe still young enough now to the point that we don't know whether there's like star potential in him. It's one of the things that like winds me up the most whenever that Shea trade is brought up, to be honest, is like we all saw potential in Shea, of course, but no one could have predicted how good a basketball player Shea would have become. Like even guys who
No,
played with him, guys who played with him with the Thunder and stuff like no one saw the leap that he was able to take. And genuinely, he wouldn't have made that leap with the Clippers. Like I'm so confident in that because he wouldn't have been able to get the time to make it. Like if he stuck around and it was Shea and Kawhi, like it's not the way it would have worked. He needed to lead a franchise. He got the chance to do that. Yeah, Chris Paul is second in command at a really crucial development point in his career as well, which I think really helped him because that's a guy who just wants to pass the ball to you and make plays that get you into the game. So Shea's path has worked the way it's worked because he was an OKC Thunder player. It's not going to work as a Clippers player. However, it maybe gives you a little bit of a blueprint to get a guy like Kobe White to become a star player potentially. The trouble
mm,
is, like Shea joined that Thunder team when the Thunder were already like drafting young guys and had young guys who already understood like the OKC Thunder culture really, and that's what the Clippers need to make sure they are honing in on now. So all the guys that we were speaking about at the top of the show, like Jordan Millers and Kobe Sanders, Kobe Browns, Cam Christie's, like the guys that were drafted by the Clippers who've been around the organization, they need genuine NBA minutes and they need to feel like they're part of the rotation so that when a guy like Shea does come in, sorry, a guy like Kobe White does come in, they feel like they are also like arriving to the party with that young player that everyone feels like they're on the same timeline. And then that culture is already there in place for Kobe White to just step into and be like, okay, I can excel here because the culture is already in place and I've got these guys that will help me settle into that. But then I can just go and be great from here and focus on being great because that's exactly what Shea was afforded with OKC. So, yeah, like the Clippers don't have great sort of draft assets in the future. It's why another reason why you need to look after what you've currently drafted already and the guys that are around. And if you don't think they're good enough, well, then you just have to keep making moves around the margins. And it's where you do need a guy like El Frank who has shown how good he is with making moves around the margins to, continue to be. I know the Clipset podcast, God rest its soul, with my friend Joseph Ryan Ward and Brian Cullen back in the day. He used to always call him Larry Fingers because like he's just like constantly like cooking up a new trade. So like get Larry Fingers to come back out again and start to do some tweaking, start to find like little moves around the edges that you can make that help the Clippers get younger, help the Clippers get more athletic, and set a culture now that means that if you do make a swing for a guy like Kobe White in free agency who isn't a star yet, you have the potential to make him a star because he might have to be a bad team for a little while. OKC were a bad team for a long while, really, while Shea was there. I think it was still like 3 years of OKC being, not necessarily a playoff team while Shea was there, maybe with 1 year thrown in there, or maybe it was 2 years, and then that sort of third and final year was the one where they made the playoffs. But yeah, like the Clippers will have to be a bad team for a little while if they're going to try and make a star out of someone like Kobe White, and the culture needs to be there. And I've mentioned, within my cultural reset sort of remit that I've programmed for the future with the Clippers, like, that needs to be the steps that are being taken immediately, really, rather than like waiting for 2027 to come around and then be like, oh, now we need to be reactive. Like there needs to be preemptive moves before then.
yeah, I do. I keep hearing like your like culture sort of point, and I probably I want to bring this up because I've just thought about this now. Is like, and I've sort of made a point around like Steve Ballmer and the fact like he wants to win like all the time, and I don't know like I want to get your thoughts on if you think that's like part of that culture, like maybe that's sort of like indirectly creating like a culture where obviously like Lawrence Frank can only really deal with like the strategy that's set by Steve Ballmer. Like if Steve Ballmer tells Lawrence Frank to blow it up, like Lawrence Frank is going to blow it up and is going to focus on young guys. But I feel like the memo from Steve has forever been like, we win now. Like we're in LA, we're in a big market, like we're going to attract big names, and you can just see it in like the moves that they've made over like the last few years, whether it's trading, obviously like the original trade with trading for Kawhi and Paul George, and like giving up obviously all of like the Clippers' future, which at the time like we've agreed it was like the move to do because you're uniting like two of the most exciting players in the game, and then like obviously just some like the moves around the margins, which I think mostly have been great, but even what like ones for like yeah, I'm thinking like Eric Gordon, players that just haven't like hit the ground running at all, just sort of giving up draft capital for players that ultimately don't make the moves. Not valuing guys like Isaiah Hartenstein because they're like young and developing, and like there's like promise there. Like there are analytics there suggesting like he can be like a great player, which he's now like. I think I always bring up Isaiah Hartenstein on the podcast, but like the other day he was ranked in Basketball Reference top 10 in the MVP tracker, which is just like it's just mental to me. Like he's got to that point, but I think there were signs that he was going to be a great player, and because obviously gave him up for John Wall because they're obviously going down this sort of like veteran route, and um, I do think there is something around this like strategy of getting these veterans that to me I just haven't seen a blueprint of that working in the NBA. Like I'm looking at the last five champions, obviously the Oklahoma City Thunder, which the Clippers pretty much birthed, who have this sort of obviously had to develop this strategy of just drafting well, and obviously their GM Sam Presti is the absolute god at doing that, and he's built an unbelievable team that unfortunately is going to probably set them up for a dynasty because of how the CBA rates sort of these sort of young players that they've got in terms of contracts, like the way they can do their roster construction, like the guys who are adding production to their team are all so young, and obviously they're like the reigning champions. You got the Boston Celtics, who obviously have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, amongst like others that they have not really had to give up a lot of draft capital for, that the Clippers have just seemed to constantly go towards to attract talent, because they're obviously not drafting well, or finding players on the margins who may not have been rated. Denver Nuggets obviously hit big with Nikola Jokic, like no one thought he was going to be the guy. Even Jamal Murray, who they drafted as well, and then Golden State Warriors obviously created a dynasty out of Steph Curry, and the Milwaukee Bucks obviously found gold with Giannis. Like I just don't. Obviously, that to me is the blueprint. Like it's fine. Like whether obviously Denver got super. I don't want to say they got lucky with Jokic, but like they obviously saw something in him to draft him where they did. Like I don't know if you can do that now. Like I don't know if Jokic, if he was like a rookie, like this next season, whether he would be drafted higher. Like maybe I don't know if like the sort of scouts have changed how they view players based on some of like the gems that they found. But I'm never like super subscribed to obviously like how important the draft is for the Clippers, because obviously they do have like this win now mindset. But I do think like part of the culture shift has to be with the way that they acquire young talent, because there's an evident blueprint here of like ultimately the Clippers want to win the championship the first time. You've had I think, what did Milwaukee Bucks win their first championship in 2020? Yeah, Denver Nuggets winning their first championship in 2022, and Oklahoma City Thunder win their first championship last season. These are things that the Clippers will actively want to do, and each of those have won it with a star player. Like they have either acquired super young or have drafted themselves. So I don't know. There's something there that I just think the Clippers need to lean into, but unfortunately, like I said, they've put themselves in a situation where that is not an option. So my biggest worry for the Clippers going forward is just like you've said, that the both free agent classes. Like I don't know if there's a guy there that you can really hang your hat on and start an era with and be like, that's the guy. Like we have to get him. Whereas like getting Kawhi and PG back then was like no, that was incredible. So I don't know if it's more like they need to land another big trade, or they just need to see out these years and then do a factory reset. But again, all just comes back to Steve Ballmer and the fact that his strategy is win now. Ultimately fill seats into a dome, but he doesn't believe in tanking. So yeah, I don't know if the Clippers carry on this strategy. They've shown that 2-1-3 era could have delivered a title, but yeah, they're in a real tough situation. But I want to hear what you think about that, Josh, because to me that seems like a blueprint, but I just don't think it's possible for the Clippers, at least in like the short term.
No, and this is the tricky thing. Like the Clippers are just always going to be snookered into a corner by the moves that have been made that have kept them in contention for so long. And like again, people can be, hindsight and sort of look back and think that like, oh, the Clippers shouldn't have made those moves because like look where it's left them now. Look like what the future hangs on. But like Like I wouldn't give back that 2021 run for to
No.
like to be a rebuilding team in those years and stuff, and hang the idea on like of a good future, because the reason that you like, it sounds so simple to say, but the reason that you want a good future is because you want to contend. So like, why would you take away a window of championship contention to try and contend again in the future? Like, the best way to contend is to contend now, and the Clippers have done that for so many years. And you say like there's not an awful lot of star quality in that sort of, in those next few free agencies that the Clippers can look at and hang the hat on, like you say. So um, I'm never going to look back at those previous moves the Clippers have made and be like they're the wrong moves to make. I hope that they've like learned lessons from them as well, and that if it is, Lawrence Frank and Steve Ballmer who take the franchise forward, even if it's Tyronn Lue who takes the franchise forward alongside those two guys, because I know there's been a bit of a vote of confidence from like that's reportedly come from Steve Ballmer in Tyronn Lue's direction as well. Then I hope that they are like starting to learn mistakes of the moves that they make. 'Cause it's one of the most frustrating things with the Clippers is and especially with Tyronn Lue, is that sometimes it doesn't feel like he learns from mistakes, or it feels like he deliberately like repeats mistakes to like make some kind of like wider point, and that kind of thing has to stop. Because I mentioned about contending now, but like contending now is a finite thing. It's not just like, you don't just contend now forever. Steve Ballmer obviously helps you move that needle, because as you mentioned at the start of your point, like you're never gonna get to the point where like Steve Ballmer is gonna rebuild. He's happy to pay luxury tax. He's got the kind of money where he can just keep retooling without ever needing to rebuild. But like, at some point you have to learn from mistakes, and at some point you have to adapt, and at some point you have to make sure that the things that you keep doing and being stubborn and making points about, you're doing it for the prolonging of a championship window. You're not doing it to the point where championship windows end up shrinking. And that's been the biggest concern over the past few years, is how many of those bad decisions that the Clippers have made have shrunk championship windows. Whereas, the move that like that the Clippers should have always been doing, because they should always be in contention, shouldn't be about the future, but it should be about prolonging that championship window. So we're coming to the end of one of those windows now, if it's not already sort of slammed shut in our faces. And the next thing the Clippers need to do is, as I say, learn from the mistakes that have been made over the last few years that did shrink the window, and go again with whatever a new era looks like. Which, maybe one of our ideas, James, and maybe it'll be a Steve Ballmer will clear house, and he'll come to the Clippers UK team, come to the View from the Clipper podcast, and be like, guys, this is the dream team. Let's get Josh and James on board, and let's steer this ship right, if you'll pardon the pun.
Yeah, and we don't we're not cheap, Steve. So if you do want to bring us in as consultants, then we wouldn't mind those deep pockets as well. But
No.
yeah, look, I'm interested to see how it develops from here. I think over like the next few weeks, like I think Tyler said, we're going to see more minutes for young guys. But if the losing streak continues, I'm interested to see whose head it is first. Is it Ty Lue? Is it Lawrence Frank? Like I think I said, I don't think Lawrence Frank can be blamed for everything. Like I said, hindsight is 2020. But if they are, like you're saying, like needing a complete new strategy, then sometimes it is like the head who goes first, and that may be both. It might be both. It might be one or the other. But if it's Lawrence Frank, who's I imagine is subscribed to Ty Lue and his way of playing basketball, like maybe both need to go. And I think like we agree, like I'm not one to like call for people to lose their jobs, but I can understand like the sentiment and why like these conversations are happening, because the Clippers starting 3-8 to a season where they are, they should be gunning for a championship is not where they need to be, and there are definite concerns, like you said, that Zubac has raised amongst others. So, yeah, let's see. We could come back next week and not have a head coach or a head of basketball, or Steve may have listened to this, and we might be on a flight out to LA to take over the LA Clippers and sort of redirect them in the future. But yeah, I had put a tweet out, and I think maybe we can quickly cover a couple, just trying to rate some of the ideas of some of the fans who sort of listened to the pod. There was a couple of ideas, particularly one around trading for Jeremy Sochan. Any thoughts on Sochan? I know obviously there's that link there. He's obviously someone who's from the UK, so that would obviously be fun for that reason. But I think probably agree is not someone that maybe would solve the Clippers' problems, particularly from what they're seeing at the moment. Like, I think they're pretty good at power forward. I love Derek Jones Jr. To me, I think he's perfect for the Clippers right now. I don't think we need him, but yeah, what do you think about the idea of trading for Jeremy Sochan and having sort of a UK representative for the Clippers fans?
Yeah, I guess like in a way fits like the loose profile that mentioned a lot throughout this episode because he's like young and hungry and has a certain amount of athleticism. I don't think he's like one of the most athletic guys around the league, and certainly not on that Spurs team either. With some of the guys that you're seeing come through the season, like Stephon Castle looks like a genuine problem, unbelievable player. Um, no, he just doesn't fix enough of the issues, like you say. Like it's another non-shooter defender who like could easily be played off the court in playoff time. It was the problem with Chris Dunn really last season was that Chris Dunn, absolutely brilliant defender, one of the best point of attack defenders in the entire league. Probably a defender that really at the guard position you can't necessarily improve on, but like if you could take away some of his defensive attributes to put them into his 3-point shooting, you absolutely would to make him a more consistent shooter because the form doesn't always look that bad with Chris Dunn, I don't think. It's just that the shot doesn't fall. So the form with Sochan looks bad. Like it's not, he doesn't have a pretty shooting form. He's not a brilliant shooter. Yeah, just that feels like you're kind of like missing the point to me if you're going for a guy like Jeremy Sochan. Really, what do you think, James?
Well, I've just taken a look at the post that I've sort of read out there, and I kind of see where he's coming from. So this is from Mikolai on over on X, and he's got a Poland flag in his title. So I think Jeremy Sochan he's part Polish. Is he part Polish from memory? So maybe
I think
that's
so,
why
yeah.
he's suggesting, but. I don't see the Clippers doing that one, unfortunately. But Jordan Miller, so clip fully loaded over on X suggested that Jordan Miller can average 15 points a season. I mean, if he plays how he did last night, I mean, dropping 22 in his first game in the season, then I don't see why not. Like he's got a bigger opportunity than he had last year. I think that team that he broke into, like did get some minutes over last season. Um, I think it was a bit more difficult for him to get into that. Like there were more guys, I think, in front of him, and he maybe just didn't get the opportunity. I think he ended up playing like a lot of garbage time in the end. But like I think, like we've said on the pod so far, like Bradley Beal going down, like that's a route that Jordan Miller can instantly exploit and make his own. And like I said, if he plays how he did yesterday against a great team, Denver Nuggets, then why not? I don't just love like the fact that he can put the ball in the net. It's also like his playmaking. Like he had one highlight yesterday that I retweeted earlier, which was his sort of drive to the basket where he sort of does like a little spin move on the perimeter and sort of drives to the rim and kicked it out to Kobe Sanders. I thought that was immense. So yeah, I'm a massive Jordan Miller fan. Whether he can average 15, like I think that maybe is a little stretch, but hey, I'm here for it. If he can offer that, like the Clippers are going to get a lot better this season. What do you think about Jordan Miller and maybe averaging 15 this year, Josh?
I don't think it's too much of a stretch, to be honest. Like I think if the minutes are consistent, and that's going to be the biggest question, really, coming back to the point I mentioned before, like if Tyronn Lue is gonna, make sure that those minutes are consistent for Jordan Miller, then I don't think 15 points is out of the realms of possibility, really. Like I think he is good enough. He puts up enough shots. He's a like a quantity shooter. So yeah, I think 15 points is not out of the realms. I think the problem with a guy like Jordan Miller is like on nights where the shot is not necessarily going down, like what does he stay on the court for? Because like he has that athleticism. So like, is he a guy who's going to be able to drive to the basket and just, see the ball go in, even if the sort of 3-point shots not falling? Is he a guy who can get it going in the mid range? I believe from what I've seen in the G League and stuff that he definitely is, but it has to translate to the NBA game as well, of course. So there are still some question marks around Jordan Miller, even though like because we don't see it on the court all the time, we can kind of forget those question marks are ever there. But they still are there. And the defensive side of his game, like, is he going to be athletic on the defensive end? Is he going to be switched on enough on the defensive end to execute defensive plays as well and be a part of the Clippers scheme defensively? Because that's going to be absolutely crucial for whatever the Clippers, go on to achieve this season. It doesn't feel like very much at the moment, but yeah, if Jordan Miller's going to get regular minutes, then I think 15 points is not necessarily like the lowest bar that it should be set for him, but I think like he can clear that, yeah, for sure.
excited to see more of Jordan Miller. He was, I think, a little bit of a forgotten man this season given his injury, but like we said, there's an opportunity there for him, and I think there's some games coming up where he could really make an impact. So let's see. I would love to come back on this podcast and he's like actually averaging 15. That'd be absolutely fantastic. So come on, Jordan. Like let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. Um, yeah, thanks everyone who's obviously sent their thoughts over. If you do have any questions or anything that you want to bring up to us, do just send us over anything over on X, and we'll try and read it out on the show, and we'll try and do more of those in the future. Just want to end it with like just a forward look over the next week before obviously we do come back with another episode. The Clippers are going on a 7-game road trip starting in Dallas. We're fortunate enough to play another struggling team. I think Mavs fans obviously rightly so are losing their mind a lot more right now, although they have been celebrating over the firing of Nico Harrison. But the Clippers are going to be facing against Cooper Flag, so that's going to be interesting. As I said, could be one for the young guys, maybe all to play together. Let's see. Let's try and get some production going in that game, and then a UK friendly tip. So the first UK friendly tip of the season is on Sunday, 8:30 over here for us. So I'm excited to actually sit down and watch a game live for the first time this season. The Clippers are in Boston. We've got some good memories in Boston over the last few seasons, and that could be a fun game as well. Again, another team going through a little bit of transition period. Obviously, I've got some injuries, particularly obviously Jason Tatum out for the season. So I'm excited about that one. And then they're going to the high flying 76ers before we record again. So that could be a good one to sort of come back on, because I have a sneaky feeling Paul George might come back for that game, because there's rumors he's coming back, and I could see it now, and that's not going to be fun, because the Sixers are doing great without Paul George, and I could just see him coming back and just adding to it. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. But yeah, that's been episode 3 of the View from the Clipper podcast. It's as I said, I think we said at the top of the podcast, tried to do our best to avoid the horrible games that we've witnessed recently. I think Josh and I are fortunate enough not to have to watch them live, or able to. So yeah, been fun just to share ideas around where the Clippers can go from here. And I'm hoping this time next week, Josh, that there's a few wins under our belt, and maybe things are looking a little bit brighter, at least as the Clippers head out on their East Coast road trip. Yeah, as always, thanks for coming on, Josh. Any final thoughts before we close episode 3?
No, I hope you're right about the Clippers giving us some wins this week, because boy, does this fan base need them. Yeah, thank you for everybody who has sending questions. We've gone over like time that we usually do a little bit. Otherwise, we'd have probably read out a few of the ones that we got in our sort of Clippers UK group chat as well, because there was some interesting ideas in there. But maybe we can sort of get around to talking about some more of them as the season goes on, and whatever direction the Clippers go in next, the games aren't going to stop. So yeah, please stops and scores in that order, to coin a Brian Seaman term for the Clippers over this next week, would be brilliant. I too am not looking forward to that Philadelphia 76ers game. That feels like it's got bloodbath potential written all over it, but we cross our fingers that that's not going to be the case. Nice one for having me on again, James.
So I'm hoping we've won 3 of these games next week, Josh, and you're not sitting down, you're standing up for the podcast. That's what I'm hoping to see. Yeah, thanks everyone listening and watching as always. It's been obviously your host James, and joined by Josh Sexton. You know where to find us. Go Clips, go.